Looks like it's streaming. I got a notification it's streaming.
Okay.
So we'll call the meeting to order then. And I want to welcome everybody. I am filling in for Tony today, and we'll talk more about who's going to fill in for Tony more long-term when we get down to a little bit later in the agenda. I want to remind everybody that it's nice if you can leave your videos on, like everybody has them on now. That does make it make us feel more like we're all together, and I do appreciate that. And to mute when you're not talking, and that's about it. Do we have any citizens' comments?
No citizens here.
Okay, then I need a motion to approve the minutes from November 10th. Robert made a motion, a second. Kathleen, any discussion? All right, then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, anybody abstain? So I think Scott's abstaining. Well, Scott doesn't get the vote. Scott's just, he's really gonna be, it's the other Scott now.
Rookie mistake.
They're gonna be, yeah, you know what? Keep giving me these things. I did download Robert's Rules for Dummies, and the Robert's Rules for Dummies is like 300 pages long. So yeah, Chris, a little vacation reading. Is there any correspondence, Molly?
No.
This is going to be fast. You guys are going to like this. All right, moving right along. Andrea, do you have a treasurer's report for us?
Yes. Hi, everybody. It's great to see you all. Hope you're all well and your families well. Due to a recent contribution, we have $100 now in the Sunshine Fund. And remember, if you would like to make a contribution, just put it in an envelope with your name on it. And please put it in the lockbox on the porch at the Madison Youth and Family Services building. And I'd like to make a motion to approve the donation, another donation, which is wonderful, of $1,275 in gift cards from Neighbor to Neighbor.
Need a second? Robert? And any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Terrific. All right, that carries unanimously. And anything else, Andrea? No.
No.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we are up to the student report. Jake, I don't know what order you guys want to go in. Jake and Darian.
Hey everyone. So Darian and I are just gonna do our usual little presentation. So what I'm actually gonna talk about first is the QPR training. So with Valor, we actually got QPR certified. I made a little note document while I was doing the course with Valor. I took notes on everything. I got like a nice little document set up. I put the document everywhere I could. It's currently on the Enlighten page, and we've been sharing it to everyone. So if anyone else ever needs, they have the ability to access the notes on, you know, QPR training, how to best help someone who's suicidal, worst case scenario. So that's kind of what we're doing. And then Darian and I are actually meeting with Crystal and with Catherine and Melissa tomorrow. And we're going to kind of like make the training a little more relatable, a little more modernized, because there's just some of the things in the training that wouldn't necessarily like talk to a youth as well. So like in the training, it says like, you know, to stay updated with someone, to like send them a card. So like instead of sending someone a card, like send someone a text, just like little subtle things like that, just kind of getting the whole training to really meet the requirements of, addressing the youth and just kind of switching up the way it's presented so that kids don't lose their focus, and making sure that it's going to be something that everyone's going to pay attention to the entire time. Darian's going to talk a little bit about Valor, his mentorship, and the arts burn thing, and then I'll wrap it up with mental health.
So for the future of Valor, we're really looking forward to doing more workshops. So throughout the year that are on specific topics so that you don't have to go through the entire peer advocates training just to learn how to handle one specific thing. And that's really what we're going to focus on doing for the next couple of months. And for mentorship, I've been working on a mentorship project. We've just sent an email out to the Guilford Mentorship Program, and we're still waiting for a response. By we, I mean me and Olivia Henkel. And then the Arts Barn had their first youth advisory meeting since it reopened. And from what I've heard, it's gone well. I know Jake's little brother's on the board. I don't know if he gave Jake an update or anything like that, but from what I've heard, it went great.
Yeah, we were super glad to hear that got started again. The Arts Barn's like currently in process of finding out who's going to be their newly found voting member youth liaison. So it's kind of a cool thing that we're getting going and trying to build some more assets with the whole liaison project. And then just to talk about a little bit of mental health stuff. So Roots is doing stall talks again. They're posting it on their Instagram page instead of the traditional, like stall talk. They are going to most likely be putting them up in the stalls again, I'm assuming, now that we're back to hybrid. That plan was kind of established last week before we really knew what was going on this week. So it's kind of all being adapted and changed as we go. The MYFS page has been used a lot more, which is really good on Instagram. So, like there's a lot more outreach to where kids actually go. Like we're not going to really check our emails as much as we're going to see like something pop up on our Instagram feed or, like Snapchat, all the apps that we use the most. So it's definitely a great thing that we're getting more MYFS involvement on social medias. I think the next step is going to be making Scott get a TikTok, but we'll see. We'll see if we can get that going.
You mean just any particular Scott or both Scotts? Because I mean, if I'm going in, I'm not going in.
I'm thinking
alone.
we do double Scots right
You've
there.
got
We do a
that, Murphy?
TikTok together.
I think that could be cool.
I think Murphy already has a TikTok, but that's
Just saying, I've been asked several times.
No, it's just great. Go ahead, Jake. It's just wonderful to hear what you're doing. Keep going. I'm sorry.
So with Enlighten, we're getting more speakers going. Things are just progressing slowly, but we're kind of filling things in as we go. We're adding more stuff to the page as we come across it. We're keeping up looking for resources and getting more people booked to come in. Miss Snyder, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we still haven't heard back from Walden. We've been trying to reach out to them about some eating disorder stuff, but we're trying to just get like all the resources in order, at least localized, so that we can really get mass outreach and really communicate all the resources. And I mean, I talked to Scott and I talked to Derek and Melissa too, and everyone at MYFS is, capable of handling someone who's suffering with an eating disorder, but we're really trying to find just a specialist to talk on the subject. So that's kind of what we're doing with that. But I will be communicating, just the idea that everyone at MYFS is able to help and, like the resources are there. But in general, what we're looking for is just
somebody from Walden that reached out. That's when they asked us to come up with those questions. Remember, they asked us for those 5 questions.
Oh, really? Okay, perfect. So yeah, we came up with a bunch of questions for the Walden interview. So we'll hopefully get that done probably next week. And then let's see. So we're actually next in the QPR. We're training ourselves, the Valor people. We're getting retrained again to be ambassadors like Catherine and Melissa are, so that we can actually go out and teach our peers. And that's kind of like what we're working with Catherine and Melissa tomorrow about is, like refining it to the youth a little more. Then the next step is going to be getting Catherine and Melissa out of the equation and actually just having peers talking to peers, trying to make that a nice little powerful message of, like we're youth to youth. And we're really trying to create a positive environment where youth are encouraging other youth to do, the steps necessary to make sure someone doesn't lose their life. COVID wise, right before school kind of got canceled, there were a lot more kids, testing positive and stuff. So things were kind of getting crazy with that. As we're back in school right now, I think about half of my cohort, I'm in cohort A, Darian's in B, half my cohort isn't even going to school because, just like quarantining issues or just wanting to stay home. I mean, I'm personally not going back to school until after December break, just because I just don't feel like it's a great idea to. And there's a lot of kids who are feeling the same way. So, I mean, as we move forward with mental health stuff, we just got to keep promoting it and keep working on the countermeasures to, like the isolation and depression that usually sets in with the quarantining, because it's definitely happening. And exams went pretty well, which is kind of a relief. I was kind of not looking forward to that, and it ended up being fine. They just did 1-hour exams over the span of the usual days. And it was within like the allotted time period, and that way we could still have our other classes going on.
Was that strange to have classes and then an exam, class and exams?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I didn't really have that many exams because I'm in the UConn classes. So how we're doing that is we don't have the trimester exams. We're just having our semester exam in January. But Darian might have a better sense of how that went.
Yeah, for me, a lot of my teachers actually gave like just a test for like a unit or something. It wasn't like an exam, which I actually found really helpful because I feel like it would have just caused a lot more stress, especially like being all online to go for the full exam. So I actually really appreciated that and how they broke it up.
A lot of teachers really took the opportunity to not give exams. I think you'd find that, very few gave midterm exams except when they were required to be, like a UConn course that required something along those lines, like if a course was one trimester and ending. So that's one thing to point out. The second one is just, I was going to ask you, Jake, about what the numbers were, and Darian, in terms of junior, senior class of kids that weren't coming back. My freshman classes are full. And I really do think we're seeing kind of a split on who's coming back, but I don't have a lot of upperclassmen right now in my course load. So do you find that the upperclassmen, like, is your brother staying home too, Jake, or is he going in? Yeah, he's also staying home.
Yeah, I mean, my calculus class currently has one person going in person.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's Mr. Kaiser and one student in the room.
There you go.
The rest of us online. So, I mean, that's got to be pretty odd. And I know a lot of teachers were kind of like, it's just weird to get back to the hybrid model after the online, because it's like every time you guys kind of readjust, it's like, guess what? Readjust again.
Yeah. Everybody's dealing with weird stuff, though. So, Darian, what were you going to say?
On my end, me and my sister are both staying home. Same thing. Just want to keep everybody in the house safe. But I have noticed in several of my classes where it's just like sometimes it's a couple of people, but other times it could be like more of a majority of people that are like online. We'll do something in like order, like the teacher will take attendance and you'll realize like, oh, that person's on their computer, or so are they. Like, I'm interested to see how many people are home in cohort B, because cohort A, it seems kind of like half and half right now, at least for me in the class that I'm in.
Is this the start of a new trimester?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think there was a lot of thought about that also, was starting the trimester with everybody in person. We found out the same time you guys did, Friday afternoon. So, it's difficult at best to start a trimester when you haven't met the students. I met all my students day one this year. But for many, many, many teachers, they're getting at least one or two new groups of kids that they've never met before. And to do that through distance learning with no textbooks distributed, it's a really difficult challenge. So I think that might have been part of the motivation. I'm sure that, and the fact that they thought the numbers were okay for where they were. So.
Yeah, and then just to wrap up, overall, I think a lot of students are just feeling hopeful that, a vaccine is coming and we'll hopefully be, able to graduate like normal and have senior prom and, maybe even like have the senior picnic at the end of the year, just kind of like holding on to that idea of, returning to normalcy sometime soon.
And I'm just hoping for a senior year.
Yeah.
Well, both of you guys stay
Me too.
optimistic, stay positive, and stay safe, and tell your friends to stay safe and to keep us all safe, right?
Of course, appreciate it.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you, guys. I lost my agenda. There we go. Mr. Cochran, you're up.
All right, well, we don't have a staff presentation for this evening, so I'm going to take some time tonight to start talking about everyone's favorite subject, the budget. I won't go into a lot of detail tonight about our actual budget projection. I'll explain that in a minute. I do want to segue a little bit off of what our student reps just reported. So I want to start first with the social media presence. So as we've been talking about for months about rolling out Mental Health Matters and more mental health awareness, our goal has been consistently to get it out everywhere we can. And the one thing I think we were sort of lagging behind was getting the youth more involved. And I think because as school got going and as a mess as everything was, it was really, feeling like slogging through mud for a while to start to really get some momentum. And just credit to like Jake and Darian and all the kids that are involved. Jake and Darian being in leadership positions in our programs. So now you're starting to see, we all are starting to see how wonderful and hopefully effective it will be as we get more youth talking about these issues. And then as Jake said, it's using the mediums that the youth use and taking great advantage of that. And the one thing I guess I want to point out to the board, when we're often looking at the board involvement and, where the board can really be very impactful. Obviously, in a normal world where we have people showing up for meetings and really talking us up about, who we are and what we represent. One thing that would really be helpful is to get more involved on social media. And, I'm never going to say to anybody to post something that, you're not comfortable posting. Hopefully everything that we have on our Facebook page and Instagram is stuff that you feel comfortable sharing. But, if you haven't liked the shit on Facebook or followed us on Facebook, a lot of what we put on Facebook is aimed at adults because we know, most of our youth are not necessarily on Facebook. Some are, but that's not the primary place where we go. So we target a lot of our adult stuff where we want to get the parents and community members on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And I'm always trying to keep up with this stuff as much as I can. That's where we're really having the youth much more involved and sharing things and posting things. And again, like they just really done a great job. So if you're not following us, I'd ask you to follow us. And when you see us post things, if you can, feel free to share them on your own Facebook pages, or if you're on Instagram, to follow us on Instagram. Because the more that, those are just like feeder bands. The more that we can get them out, the more I think we can connect with people. And I tell you, wherever you're in conversations with neighbors or fellow Madison residents, tell them about us, whether you use social media or call them on the phone, or text them, whatever you want to do. But as many people as you can get involved in following us, the better off we are. And people don't necessarily have to, always know everything that we're doing, or, not everyone wants to be as involved or knowledgeable about what Youth and Family is doing. And that's okay. We just want to educate the people so they know that we're here when they do need us And certainly we want people knowing what we're doing, as it pertains to, our role in the town and our role in the community. So again, hats off, Jake and Darian and all of our youth. You heard them both mention the word ambassador. So we've created a designation for the youth that we're going to train as trainers. And again, they both kind of spoke to this. So we had basically our Valor kids trained much in the same way that we've trained our trainers. We have 9 ambassadors currently trained. We want to train up to 12. Again, as they mentioned, they're going to be more involved doing more direct youth-to-youth training. And we also plan on abducting some of these youth, I shouldn't say that, utilizing some of these youth when we start to roll this out into the community. So when we're talking either to a group of parents or a group of coaches and doing QPR training with certain groups, we have the youth lockstep with us. So we just feel like that's the most effective way to continue to roll out QPR. QPR, again, question, persuade, refer. It's a evidence-based approach to suicide prevention. Again, we really like it because it helps people identify someone in distress. So you don't necessarily have to know that somebody is suicidal or might be suicidal. It is helping people to see signs of distress and then empowering and enabling a person to bring up the question of suicide. So we know that suicide is very stigmatized in our culture, as it is in many places around the world. It's a very hard thing to ask somebody. And one of the myths that we know has been prevalent and often gets in the way of somebody asking someone if they're potentially suicidal is the fact that the belief that you might make somebody suicidal by asking them if they're suicidal. So by bringing it up, somehow you'll put the notion in their head and then feel responsible if somebody hurts themselves. We know that that's not true. If somebody is suicidal, they are. And if they're not, by asking them, you're not putting anything in their head. You are bringing up a topic that might be very difficult for them. And then the QPR training gives you some language and some tips and ideas about how to connect that person with help or helpers. And in many cases, maybe just stay involved until somebody is connected with someone else. So it's a really good training. It's not a long training. It can be done within an hour. As the guys brought up, making it relatable is really the key. That was one of the first things that Melissa and Catherine talked about when we had them trained as trainers, that the training itself, if it's dry, if you're not really as engaged in some of these efforts, it may not be as effective. So that's why we had our people trained, and we want to hone anything that we do towards the specific groups that we will roll this out to. And the last thing to mention on QPR, so we do envision rolling this out to get as many high schoolers, as many youth as possible trained, and not trained as trainers, but given this knowledge and trained as much as we can train everyone we can. Rolling that out into the school is something that's really a heavy lift, and we have to do that in planning, and that's going to take a little bit of time. But we can control what we do with our own groups. So getting the ambassadors trained and now rolling it out more into other groups that we do. So actually tomorrow, peer advocates are going to be trained. Our Girls United group is going to be trained. And one more, Roots. We're also going to train Roots. So all
Darian
that's
and I are
happening.
helping with that.
Yeah, not tomorrow. What's tomorrow? Wednesday.
Thursday.
Thursday. That's all happening Thursday. And then we're going to create a training for GASP. And we want to put a little bit of extra thought into that one, because we know that GASP, just for that population of youth that are involved with GASP, we know the LGBTQ population tends to be more at risk for suicide. So we want to do the QPR training and also have some sensitivity and allow them discussion to bring up things that might be more particular to them. So that one we'll be putting together hopefully within the next few weeks, if not month, to present to them. So a lot of good stuff going on with mental health. So those are my thoughts there. Um, Let me talk about this next thing. So again, around board engagement, board involvement, the town has been in the process of looking at affordable housing. And if any of you paid attention into the papers, this does tend to be a bit of a hot button issue in town because it does get at some of some of the potential racial inequalities and things like that often underlie some of what we understand as fair housing and affordable housing concepts and laws and zoning types of things. Anyway, the town would like to create a ad hoc committee that takes up affordable housing as an issue in the town of Madison. And the Board of Selectmen has asked for there to be some representation from the various town boards that are already very, I think, connected to some of these topics. So there was a recent Board of Selectmen meeting, and they accepted, and I'll show you the, hold on, let me just see if I can screen share this for everybody. All right, so this is under the leadership of Dave Anderson, who's the Director of Planning and Economic Development. So the proposal would be to get the public involved and get this, essentially get this committee together. And they're looking for representation from particular boards, and one specifically is our board. So I have to get back to Dave about a volunteer from the Youth and Family Services Board to join this ad hoc committee. We already have one board member who, when I brought this up at the executive committee, jumped at the opportunity. So that actually immediately brought us back to another question, like, well, what if we have two people that are interested in doing this? So I did reach out to Dave, and so we can't have one representative that comes directly from the board, and then the town's going to be looking for other community members. So I think the question for the board tonight will be, if we have one member who's feeling very strongly about coming on, if we have more than one, we can certainly approach this to have one person come on to represent the board, and then another person come on to more from, I'd call it an at-large bid if you're familiar with NCAA basketball tournaments. So let me. All right, so how do I stop sharing this stupid thing? Oh, there it is, sorry. All right, any questions on that from board members? So if you're wondering about what the commitment would look like, they do want to get this going soon, probably beginning in the new year, at the beginning of the new year. It needs to be done by July of 2022, which seems like a long time, but I think their hope that, I mean, that's the deadline to get everything in. The hope would be to have the project wrapped up before that. And there'll likely be a monthly meeting. There may be times where committee members would be required to go more frequently or be more involved, depending on whatever part of the project people were working on. So the interested person was Andrea Aaron. So and Andrea, you can talk to your if you'd like to share why you're interested and your passion for this particular topic. Would you like to share? No, it's okay.
Unmute, okay.
There you go.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very interested in this topic because of my background, growing up in the housing projects in the Bronx and seeing a lot of insecurity with housing. Also, being a teacher in some marginalized, underserved districts for 44 years and hearing students talk about situations of homelessness and housing insecurity. And I'm also on the board for Concord Meadows in Madison, which is housing for disabled individuals and senior citizens, and it's partially subsidized by the government. But I feel that there's a real need to look into this in Madison, and that's where my interests lie.
So I would just ask, are there any other board members that might be interested in being a part of this? Well, given Andrea's level of interest in this, I think, and if you all agree, this is not my call. This is you as a board to make this decision. Dave, do you want to entertain? I don't know if we need a board vote for this.
Yeah, I don't know if we need a board vote because it's a volunteer, but I mean, Andrea sounds like a perfect candidate to do it. We do have this opportunity that if somebody else does want to do it, they really could do it as a citizen, and that would still give us an opportunity to have anybody else that's on the call today that wants to do it, or even somebody who's not, could send, it's Dave Anderson, they would send an email to.
Well, I had to reach out to me, and then I'll
Yeah.
I'll point you in the right direction.
Yeah, so I don't know that we need to vote. If you feel we do, we can, but I haven't heard anybody else say they're knocking on the door.
I think you should have a vote, Dave, because she's representing our board. Even though it's a volunteer, she's still representing our board, so it should probably be voted on, so it's legit.
All right, I
That's
see
just
no.
my opinion.
Well, your opinion sounds like a good opinion to me. I see no harm in doing it. So somebody want to make a motion?
I'll
Kathleen?
make a motion to nominate Andrea to serve as our board representative.
Second?
I second the motion for Andrea.
Yeah. And any discussion?
I just want to say thank you, Andrea, for your passion for this topic. I really think it's such an important thing for our town, and I know it's going to be hard work. And like Dave said, it could be a little controversial at times, but it's so important. And I think the basis for mental health, if you don't have secure housing, it's really hard to work on people's mental health and their well-being. So thank you so much for your efforts to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, all in favor? Opposed? Abstain? All right, there you have it.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank
I
you
appreciate
all.
it.
Yeah, thank you, Andrea.
Thank you
Dave,
very
that's-
much, Andrea.
That's 2 votes you've carried tonight. You're really knocking it out of the park, I have to say.
Well, let's keep going. I'm working on a record here. We might, I just want to keep this thing moving.
All right,
I want to start on a good track. I don't want this to be the 4-hour meeting.
we're rocking.
You are. You're doing great.
So, I know you all love budget. So we got our budget guidance on the week of Thanksgiving. And then we were, all department heads, and this is typical year to year, meet with the first select person and the head of finance. So I met with Peggy and with Stacy Nobitz actually just yesterday. So all of this is sort of prologue and lead up to when we actually, pitch our budget and enter it into our system, which begins the process, leading up to the boards getting involved, Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and that whole process. So having this just coming up now, and we've been looking at numbers, so we kind of knew where we were headed with things, but without the guidance and without some other kind of more concrete information, we really couldn't do anything formal. So we're working on that now. So this is probably going to be more of a 2-part presentation. And I do think I think you'll be okay with this, because it's going to be, you'll get the information that you need, and hopefully everyone will have plenty of opportunity to ask questions as you need. So I'm really going to start you out with what the current budget is, because this maybe can fill you in as to what we're doing now, how it's set up. And then I'll continue on and just talk about some of the trends that will lead into our formal budget asks. So we have, our budget really is split into two major parts. The first one is the salary, and the second one is our operating expense. And I think one thing to know, we have almost no control over salary. So that's all done under HR and finance. It's all driven primarily by, by state Department of Labor guidelines and the town policy procedures as they relate to our job descriptions and any kind of step increases and things like that we have. And the town is a very pretty, I think, a good structure, a consistent structure that it uses year to year. So whenever, if they need a new job description to cover a particular area within a department, there's a formalized process, there's a structure to it, and it's placed into a matrix, a salary matrix that's every department has the same sort of standards, the same kind of language, and the levels, with some variation, and I think some discrepancy sometimes, because it's a lot of apples to oranges throughout the town, different jobs. But on balance, the system really is quite fair and well done. So, and we're lucky for that, because there was a time in this town where that was not the case. So anything that we have in terms of our salary, unless we're hiring someone new or somebody's going through, their steps, we really don't have a lot of say in how that goes. Now, we haven't done a lot of new hires other than we did bring on a parent support counselor last year. So I don't think you're going to see a lot of increase in our salaries this year, because most of our staff are no longer eligible for steps. The only time that you're going through steps is when you're new to your jobs, and there's 5 steps within a level, and once you've exhausted them, the only thing that you're eligible for is a cost of living. So these are salary totals. As you see under salary, I'm the only one who's sort of singled out as the department head. Admin is everybody in the department as a town employee, and the salary for office, that includes Sharon and Molly as a combination. Why they break it down that way, I really don't know, but they do. So this is what we are this year. So I don't foresee a lot of shifting in that. And even if I did, there's nothing I can do about it. Under operating expenses, and I broke these down, I kind of looked at this over a couple of days, and I wound up just listing it in order of amounts. So as you go down the list, it really just, the numbers go up. So this isn't really grouped in any particular way, other than just to see how we sort of step up from, area to area. And you'll see, I put the percentages, those are percentages of change from the previous fiscal year. So you have an idea of what we may have decreased or increased in a way. For example, you can see on the furniture line, we doubled that coming into this year because we've got like broken chairs and desks that we're trying to replace. So we upped that a little bit. Just, again, not to give you too much detail, but just so you have an idea of how it's being presented. So these are all the areas. I'll point out, our overtime budget, that's one that we've created over the last couple of years, and I'll go into more detail about that in a minute. We have 2 social service lines, and one is, as you see, it says professional, technical, mental. So they just shortened it too short. It should say mental health. This is a small social service line that we use we pay for outside providers to provide therapy services to social service clients, so to adults. So we don't do it directly, but we have an option in a small line of money where we can pay for somebody to access someone local and somebody who may be more of a specialist in an area. So this is for residents who may not have the financial wherewithal, to access something on their own. They might be limited in their health insurance or in their out-of-pocket ability, and also don't want to, either can't get to Brantford or want to apply to BH Care. So we keep a small amount of money just to help those people. The other social service line, as you see down under local relief, So that's a good chunk of money. That's $20,000. We've kept it at that amount. It was higher in years past before we had the privilege and the good fortune of having neighbor to neighbor. We've actually not had to use local relief as much in recent years because of neighbor to neighbor. We've year to year kept it pretty much where we are at that amount. And our primary reason for that is, if something did come up, if we had a sort of it could be like a mass disaster kind of like a major hurricane where we have to find money for housing or something like that, or we have to do something that we're not foreseeing. And we want to have that money here. And if we don't spend it, it goes back to the town. So it's a little bit of a cushion. And it's one that I think, is open for debate because, we typically, now that we have neighbor to neighbor, and I don't want to ever just sort of assume that we're always going to have neighbor to neighbor, or the good fortune of having what neighbor to neighbor does now. But if we were looking to reallocate money within our budget, we do spend, we do have quite a bit wrapped up in local relief. And if we're not using it, it goes back to the town. So good for the town. It's something we can get back if we don't use it, but not as good for us because it's in our budget. And if we don't use it, it's gone, in that year. Lastly, I want to just point out that last line, our professional technical services. So this account actually covers quite a bit here. So under professional technical, that's all of our contractual therapists that we pay to be therapists, provide therapy here that are not on our staff. So they're paid under contracts. This includes our psychiatric consultant, that's Dr. Claudia Califano. She's got a chunk of funding that we put into this account. Our board staff engagement funding comes out of this account. Our third-party billing comes out of this account. So that's why it's as big as it is. Given the mental health needs and what we would project as continuing mental health needs, if we were going to reallocate this year, we'd probably move things more just to make sure that that particular line is funded enough. We do use our enhancement grant, that's about 10 grand a year, to also fund our contractual therapists. And if that ever shrunk or was lost, we'd have 10 grand that we'd have to somehow make up. And in years past, when it's gotten cut, we've had to do a little dance or got delayed. We've had to do a little dancing in our professional technical line to make sure that we kept people. So lastly, I want to just point out to everybody our total budget, and I took this right off of the our approved budget book from the town. Our total budget and it is there. It was about a 2.68% increase from the previous year. And I would think, again, when we're done with all the numbers, this operating budget is all going to be level, and it's going to be whatever we have for salaries. Any increases there is where you're going to see the increases. Want to talk about a couple of trends. So from last year into this year, so COVID had quite an impact on our budget. And we actually wound up underspending about 27% of what we asked for last year. We did not spend, we gave it back to the town. Vast majority of that money was social services. So underspending on our mental health line and under local relief, again, because of neighbor to neighbor. But quite a bit of savings, as it turns out, on travel. We weren't going anywhere, so our mileage reimbursement was down. Our postage, which we did actually project to be decreased, we didn't use as much, and I did spell that right. And our overtime account was also low. So those are the high. We had minor decreases and the other accounts are underspending. A couple of accounts we did spend 100%. In general, there were savings on every line, and then the majority, the greater savings were in these areas. And again, I already said about the major savings because of in social services. Coming into this year, we're still underspending on travel and some program expenses. So we had budgeted coming into this year, for example, for Peer Helper Retreat, which was an in-person retreat, usually costs us a couple $1,000 for the facility and the bus and the food and the staffing. And we didn't do a retreat this year, so we found some savings. So again, as an example, So we'll likely underspend. You know, we are looking at, since it's program expenses, it's funding that's designated for program expenses. We are looking at what other expenses we have right now. So one thing we are looking at doing is taking advantage of that funding, and say, like for Peg Butler, who's our staff person who runs our peer helper program, to get her trained in QPR. So it's a training and it's an expense that we can incur under peer helpers, because that money otherwise is not going to be utilized the way it would have been. So we're trying to be creative, not just try to spend every money just to spend it, but if we do have things that we could use that would address long-term needs, we want to consider that and pull the trigger on it where we can. And we are a little slow this year on our social service lines. That's not uncommon for this time of year. It's usually winter where we see when we do use those lines, it's usually during those times. So it's too early to tell exactly where we'll wind up spending on that. In terms of projecting out, so I met with Peggy. Her guidelines to all department heads, they want every department head to make a level budget. She's interested, and I think a lot of people are interested if there's any types of program changes or things that we're doing differently because of COVID, that we might look at permanent changes. And I think this probably is relevant to like some of the other departments in town, where they're doing things now online for like paper applications are gone. You don't have to come in to apply for permits and things like that. You can do a lot of that online. I think you're going to see changes in that way. And she wants every department to look at what we might keep, or what we've learned in this god awful time that we might want to make permanent. She wants any recommendations that we can for any savings in the budget. I'll tell you all that in the town budget, if you give money back, you lose it. It doesn't reappear in your budget next year. And I brought that up with Peggy, and I think that she does understand that. And we do need to look as the town. I think as residents are going to be, there's a lot of hurting people out there, and these are very tough economic times. So we'll need to look at that carefully. She's asking everyone to highlight departmental goals and challenges, things that might be long and short-term needs, and any needs that maybe would help us enhance our technological capabilities. So now we're looking at, so this new fiscal year would start in July of 21. I think, again, the guys brought up earlier about, looking forward to a vaccine and what might look like almost normal. So, it really is interesting to think about how this is all going to go, how quickly people can be vaccinated, how quickly we can get back to normal. I think most conservative, estimates are this is going to still be sort of a slow rollout, and we'll likely still be wearing masks and things like that for quite a while. So who the heck knows? I don't, so I think we have to look at this next budget much like we would have in a normal year budget. And have to think about what might be sort of transitional things. So like, we may not be doing as much travel, staff travel, but we'll likely go back to more. And we already know, wherever we have offered to do an in-person clinical appointment or a group meeting, everybody's jumping at that. So I don't think that we're going to turn into like a virtual hub for clinical services or anything else that we're doing. I think, you could see benefits for, like regional meetings and things like that to be more virtual, possibly to save people the mileage or going to places. And if a lot of places close down, like there's no more, there's not as many physical office spaces anymore. You probably see in some, areas, some businesses, like that's going to continue. I'm not sure that that's going to be us. I think a lot of what we still need to do is going to be in person. So I don't know that we're going to see a lot of savings there. But all of this is what we're talking and thinking about now. We are definitely going to look to maintain our operating budget. We're going to be very judicious in terms of how, if we are going to reallocate any funding, how we're going to do it. And likely we would again, would be trying to make sure that that professional technical main line is well funded. So part of that conversation yesterday, this might be too much detail for you all, but so we have an OT account that not only pays for our overtime for our staff, but also funds our after hours stipend. So we have people who carry our cell phone, and we budgeted last year for them to get paid a daily rate. It's a small amount, but it adds up to like $100 a week if you carry the phone. So if you do nothing but carry the phone, you make $100, which prior to last year was nothing. So it's at least a little something. And then if you do have to take a call on the after hours phone, or you have to do work related to after hours coverage, you get paid your rate. So this is only for carrying the phone. Everybody gets the same amount for carrying it. If you had to work during that time, then you get paid your rate. Anyway, they don't want that in the overtime line anymore. They'd like that to come under its own heading. So we have to work on that. And we also were paying for any temp coverage. This is so like when Molly's out, she's on a vacation, we have a temporary employee that we brought on just for those occasions. So that also needs to come out of there. And no additional requests. Last year we went to bat hard to get a change in our parent support counseling position. We're not touching that this year. We can't. For one, our clinical study is still being done. It's not completed yet, so we don't know the outcome of that. And this is not the time to be asking to grow a position. So we're making do with what we have. We did last year. We'll do it this year, and for as long as we need to. So. So that's my sort of overview. I don't know if anyone has any requests or comments or thoughts.
Scott, I have a quick one without opening a can of worms, I hope. How's the other side of the coin? How's revenue fared during COVID?
So we're, for the clinic revenue, we're ahead about $3,000 from where we were the same time last year. It's interesting. The revenue took a hit initially with the pandemic because when we shut down and we didn't have the virtual capability yet, we had about a month before we got rolling again last year. So this year, having virtual, whenever we've had to go to remote, like we were completely remote for a couple of weeks leading into Thanksgiving. This week we've brought a few people back, along with what the town expects us to do. So far, revenue's been okay because we've been cooking in the clinic.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, and our grants right now appear to be will likely be funded at what we projected them. So we're not looking right now at any cuts in grants in this fiscal year, and all bets are off for how they're going to look in next year. We'll have to see how the legislature goes. All right. Any other thoughts, questions? Scott Murphy, any thoughts from Board of Selectmen perspective? Everything that I'm saying fairly accurate with what you're understanding from Peggy and folks at BOS?
Well, we're still waiting, I think, at this point, Scott, candidly on some guidance from the Board of Finance. Okay. In terms of, what the budget guidelines should look like. We've obviously entertained into the process of CIP and started to look at capital projects, but from an overall budget standpoint, I'm anticipating a 0 to 2% lift. My suspicion is we'll be guided more towards 0 than 2%. So we'll have to see.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right. And so when in next month's director's report, I'll give you detail about where those numbers are going. That'll be even more boring than what I just presented to you just now. But you need to know it. And, if you have any questions or thoughts or ideas about what we're doing, that's why you're here. Feel free to bring it up, whether you bring it up at a board meeting or, reach out to me, email or call. Or follow me on TikTok. I apparently will be in that.
Hey, do it on TikTok. That was my suggestion. It's just a little dance about the budget. That'd be good.
We got some good ones brewing, trust me.
Kathleen, did you put your
Just
hand up?
a kind of a sidebar question. You had a consultant visit a few months ago. Is there a report on that or any outcome on that
Nope,
visit?
not yet.
Okay.
Then I don't mean, it's probably getting too late. I have to be careful because I'll start to get too flip. She's, that's Loretta J. She's a consultant from CCM, and she's really been great. I think I had shared with the board, we gave her a lot of information, which, it's a comparative study. So she has to take everything, all the stats and data that we are doing that help to support what we're doing clinically. And then she has to go out and compare them to other towns. So just before, I think the last time we spoke was just before the holiday. And she had some questions for us, but she was also in the process of beginning to interview other towns. So I think Peggy was saying she was going to reach out to Loretta, see where she is in the process. The original hope for the completion of this was to get it in this month and have it ready for budget. So Peggy was going to reach out to her and hopefully get, some sense of what's going on there. But we feel good about what we've given her, and we feel good about what she's asked and the work that we think that she's done so far. So I'm, cautiously optimistic that report's really gonna show not just how hard we work, but how we compare to some other towns. We'll share just a couple of our little tidbits. We are doing a couple parent groups. We have our new parent support counselor who's tried to pitch a couple of virtual parent groups on various topics. That's not been heavily received so far. So we're looking to market that a little bit more and get Frankie more involved in some other things that we're doing to kind of get our name out there. There's another parent group that I found really interesting and came from Peg Butler. So she runs our Peer Helper program, and there's a strong parent component in that program. So when the kids are coming in for their retreat, Peg will do a Peer Helper orientation with the parents and explain to them the program and really give them a really good background and knowledge with how the program works. And it's supporting the parents to support the kids. And these are middle school kids that go away for a weekend on a retreat. Some of them this is like the first time that they would experience something like this. So anyway, Peggy had been talking to a couple of Peer Helper parents, and since they had sort of met prior to this year's virtual retreat, they all kind of bonded. And so she pitched to them the idea of going, having sort of a parent group that's specifically for Peer Helper parents. And it sounds like they all sort of jumped at the opportunity. And again, in this world that we're living in, I think it was really very much appreciated. So she's going to start doing a parent group with this group of Peer Helper parents over the next month or so, I believe. And it might be something that continues on and grows into something else. But was excited to share that with all of you. And last but not least, we were asked by the police department to be interviewed. They're undergoing a CALIA certification. So this is a major certification for the police department in town. And they asked for a few people to be interviewed as their collaborators. And I'm set to be interviewed by their accreditors tomorrow, actually. So I'm really looking forward to that. And that's my best attempt at a segue to our liaison report, which is coming up. And hopefully,
I was going to say sounds like a great transition to
Yes.
Sergeant York. Jeremy, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, be nice. Remember, you've got some. You got to
I'm
be
taking
nice to
notes.
Scott now.
Exactly. I got good brownie points right there.
right.
Sorry guys, my video, when I put the video on, my phone freezes. So sorry for my video. I hope you guys can hear me.
Not a problem.
When I finished my master's program the end of last year, my laptop died on me, and I said I'm refused to buy another one. So I'm done with schooling. So you'll just hear me tonight. But yeah, to catch that, we're going through right now our accreditation process. We first were accredited back in 2014, And every year we have to submit files. It's approximately around like 480 files about processes, our policies. And we have to demonstrate, and all within those 481 files, there's all separate subsections. So it makes it even more than the 481. And we have to demonstrate that we're trying to do, or not trying, what we are doing the best practices, for limiting liability, that we're holding up to the gold standard in law enforcement. And we received that initially in 2014, and we've been accredited every year since. And in 2017, our dispatch, our communications department, received that accreditation. And we are the only one in the state of Connecticut that has that. And we are one of 33 departments throughout the United States that has the dual accreditation in the department and in our communication center. So we, right there, I am blowing our horn a little bit. So, it's a lengthy process that we have to do to show a document on a daily basis what we're doing and everything. But, it goes hand in hand with the police accountability bill that passed. The state is mandating that departments get accredited by this CALEA organization. And we've already been doing that now for the past 6 years. So we are ahead of the game, when it comes to that. So we're going through the process. They've been, the commission, the assessors have been meeting with people throughout the town for select woman, HR. They're going to meet with Scott tomorrow. I've had a couple interviews, and, it's a lengthy process, and it looks good that we're going to get accredited again and keep up that, standard that we hold, that our chief holds us to. So that's one of the things, right now. The other thing is we're policing in an area of COVID. So we've changed our processes when it comes to, obviously there's some calls we have to respond in person, and we're wearing our masks. We're trying to, wear our N95 masks. But if there's if it's a fraud investigation, we're doing it over the phone now. So we're trying to limit as much, face-to-face contact as possible. Our chief has been extremely proactive with, trying to keep every week we get our police cars spray down. We have as much PPE as we need, hand sanitizer, Lysol wipes, and, we're just doing our best to limit our exposures and, hopefully keep our infections down. So, because at the end of the day, we still need a police department responding. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it. When it comes to, the police accountability bill, we're kind of ahead of the game when it comes to CALEA. Our big thing that, our chief has always promoted is police officer training. Just a quick synopsis, every 3 years, police officers have to be had to go through 60 hours of retraining in order to get recertified as a police officer. And as a department, as our training, our officers have gone over, every time they go for reaccreditation, they're over 100 hours of police training. And that's from anything from procedures, dealing with people with mental health, how to de-escalate. So we always have, promoted training. We've always sent our officers to training. And, we feel like we're a little bit ahead of the game when it comes to this police accountability bill compared to other law enforcement agencies in the state. So, it's kind of where we're at. We don't really have much more to report, but that's kind of, our big thing right now we're going through is the CALEA accreditation. And, we're looking like we're going to keep our accreditation going. So we're really excited and happy about that. I don't know if you guys have any questions for me. I'm happy to ask, but that's pretty much all I got for now.
Jeremy, I want to thank you for you and your fellow officers for doing everything you guys are doing to keep us safe during this incredibly dangerous time for you. So thank you very much.
And I like to make just a comment as a citizen and as a parent of a first grader at Ryerson. I thank you, teachers, for keeping the schools open. I have a special needs 6-year-old, and he thrives at school. And every time we get the email from the superintendent, we're like, please keep the schools open. Please keep the schools open. And, as a citizen, I thank you guys for all that you guys do, all the teachers.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I heard of that.
Yeah.
All right. Chairperson's comments. I'll just fire up the PowerPoint. It's 15 or 16 pages long, and we should be out of here soon. That was for Scott. I've got very few comments today. They're all around personnel. So just a quick note, there are 3 of you, all of whom are on the call now, whose terms expire as of January 1st, 2021. So that's Kristen, John, and Sarah. Have any of you received any communication from your board, your Democratic or Republican boards, committees? No,
I haven't.
Nothing yet.
nothing yet. Scott, Scott Murphy, anything you know about how that should be happening or whether we're behind on those things?
No, the actual nominating chairs will reach out to you as individuals, but yeah, I wouldn't. I think you guys should just, given that you know that your term is ending, I would reach out to them regardless. I think that would be helpful. All they need to know is whether you're interested in extending or not.
Yeah. So do we know who those, do we have contact information for that, Scott C?
It is Ron Clark for the Republican Party, and it is, oh goodness, for my party now, I'm blanking. Lewis, Maureen Lewis for the Democratic Party.
Maureen Lewis
I knew you had my back, Andrea.
And the other one, I'm sorry, you said for the Republicans?
Ron Clark.
Ron Clark. Okay. So if you would reach out to those folks and find out when they will be, or actually just reach out and let them know that you're interested. If you, for some reason, to anybody, if you're considering stepping off the board, it would be really great to know about that with as much lead time as possible, so that we can try and stage, successors and have things lined up so that we don't have these gaps. This is one of Tony's great legacies. Is he really did work to get the board up to its full membership. There were a bunch of years here where we did not run at those numbers, and so anything we can do to keep everybody on the board would be terrific.
I know there's a new member being installed by the Board of Selectmen on Monday, I believe, at least to the Democratic Party. So.
Okay, great. That's terrific.
Yep. So next meeting.
Fantastic. So that brings us to the vacancy, to Tony's vacancy. This is my, I'm in his acting role as vice chair tonight, but Pam has agreed to step up and to move on to the executive board, which is awesome. We are thrilled to have her do that. And again, there's a lot of clapping going on. We can do that. So what that would do is that would fill my spot if I move into Tony's. And so that's what we would like to do, is to take a motion to approve the nominations that would put Pam in as the vice chair and put me on as the chair. And then the other two positions, as you know, Kristen and Andrea would continue on in their same positions that they're in now. So we need a motion for that.
I move the slate of officers as presented. David as chair, Pam. Okay, David as chair, Pam as vice chair, Andrea as treasurer, and Kristen on the executive committee.
Great, and we're only going to vote on the two today because we believe we don't have to vote on the other two because their terms are not up at this point.
I amend my motion.
I probably wasn't supposed to correct you until
You just got
later.
excited, Kathleen. That's okay.
The way it is.
Everybody,
We'll
let's
get
get
it right.
everybody on the executive.
Can we have a second?
Second.
Okay, and then any discussion?
Go team.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? And the motion carries. It's too late to turn back now, Pam.
You too, David.
I was thinking that, but I wasn't going to say it out loud.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Okay, I believe if
you both.
I've read I'm very very excited to continue working. This is one of my highlights in my life. I think that I'll say this to our youth that are on the committee. I think if you can always find some way to stay involved and connected to your community, especially as you get older, it'll pay itself back many times over. So I thank everybody. I do.
Charter Review Commission.
Yeah, I know you're shooting for my position already. So And it's yours when you get old enough. So if I've read Robert's rules right, being that we've made it through our agenda, I don't believe we need a motion. I think we can just adjourn the meeting at this point. So I will see you guys after the new year. Have a happy new year.
Happy
And happy
Hanukkah.
holidays.
Happy
Happy holidays,
everybody.
everybody.